Brook Monahan, welcome to the Usher Group Podcast, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you on here today, and really appreciate you taking the time to come out.
Thanks for having me, Michael. We love working with you guys, love what you're about. So, thanks for the opportunity and glad to be here, mate.
Talk me through yourself, like how did you get into property initially, and then from there, I guess, ultimately leading into founding Mosaic?
Yeah, mate, it's a good question. I've been asked it a bit in the past, and I think one of the things about my story that some people can relate to is that I didn't take a conventional path into construction or develop. I didn't come from a trade-based school. I didn't go and study construction management or property economics. I wasn't 15, 16, 17 and think that, I want to become and be a property developer or a builder. It wasn't my path. I studied agribusiness and ag science at uni, and mate, when I first left, I went and worked on cattle stations up in West Queensland near the Queensland Territory border, and mate, I had aspirations of wanting to go and build my own cattle empire, mate, and buy cattle stations and do all of that. But it was it was very ambitious at the time. I was pretty determined to have a crack, and I was at that stage of my life really determined to work hard, and I had a massive thirst for knowledge, and so I'd align myself with other people that were mentors that I thought a lot of in the ag industry. But there were some realities around that too. I came from nothing, so I didn't come from money, and I didn't have a station or a property through my extended family to go back to. I probably realised fairly early on that whilst I loved the agricultural industry and what it stood for, it was going to become really difficult for me to build a career in that industry. So I pivoted pretty quickly thereafter, mate, and then I moved back to Toowoomba. I got involved in grade trading for a little while, but then I started my first of many businesses in my sort of my 20s period. I call it my 10-year apprenticemmost, mate. I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yep.
But I was pretty determined to have a crack. And, probably the next most aligned sort of industry for me was construction development. So I'd always had a passion for working with my hands. So even though I didn't come from a trade-based school, I'd spent a lot of time working on different places in the bush, and always loved working with my hands, always a perfectionist, whether that was in the leather and saddlery space all through my teenage and early adult years to timber work and woodwork and building, renovating. So there was a genuine passion for working with my hands.
Wow.
Love design, love sort of that artisan, trade, craft, had a lot of respect for people that were good with their hands. And so for me, construction development was a natural path. I got into construction development because I had an interest in it when I realised that I couldn't create a career out of the ag industry. So I started a whole series of business, including a construction development business I was probably 24 at the time, but I also built a meat company during that point in time. I built a funds management and private wealth business, and I built a law firm. And
wow.
Mate, I won't bore you with the detail.
And this is your 10-year apprenticeship part that you're talking about?
10-year apprenticeship, mate, yeah.
Wow.
So I think it was 6 businesses across 5 industries and, over 100 staff. And, mate, the only reason I think I went down that path is because I was too naive to realise that it was a ridiculous idea to try and run so many different businesses across different sectors. And some of those businesses were to feed myself, to get ahead, to create money, to create an opportunity for a future when I was, going to start a family. The property construction side was more driven by a passion for property and construction development, design, working with my hands, than probably driven by wanting to make money. And I think that was a really good starting point or a segue into the industry for me, because I came into the industry for the right reasons. So
yeah, wow. So you use other businesses as more of a vehicle, not necessarily a passion project, but once you started to generate enough wealth and income, Brook, you were able to transfer that into the property game?
Yeah, more or less, mate, but not quite. They're definitely at the start of that.
Sure.
I think what happened during that process is you got to learn some lessons, and I was probably not a great listener at that point in time, even though I had people I looked up to and I read a lot and I was just so keen to get ahead. I also needed to go and learn through action and make plenty of mistakes. I was lucky enough to have a bit of success in that time frame, financially or otherwise, but it wasn't sustainable, mate. And I also learned a lot about human beings and relationships, and you can't be exposed to that many people working that hard across so many different businesses and not get caught out at some point. And I definitely got caught out. Learned the hard way, but that helped refine the focus, definitely.
Yep.
So I got to sort of the end of that period, and there was a bit of fatigue in having to deal with cleaning people's mess and lack of accountability up. And I realised, what am I doing? I can't continue to do all of this at once. Why don't I just do one thing for the first time in my life? Just do one thing, but do it really well. And the thing that I loved the most, and I was actually the best out of all of those businesses, was my construction development business. So.
Wow.
I sold a few of the businesses at that time, and I gave a couple away to long-term loyal employees. I just needed to focus, mate. So I literally went backwards to go forward, but it was a very, very conscious decision for me because I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Targeted and figured out where you wanted to go.
Just took me a little while to get there, mate. But,
Yeah.
I look back on that time frame too. I say it took me a little while to get there. Like, it was a pretty intense 10 years for me, but I was still, in my early 30s when I made that transition. So, mate, 2004, I started getting into splitters, and I grew a business with some, Hungarian trade base because I had an older Hungarian guy that I'd formed a relationship with, and that business grew quite substantially. And then I got into building sort of high-end homes, some speculative and some for other people. And then I realised that, I need to supplement that with more affordable housing choice. So I did some stuff in partnership with government, pre-GFC, around the NRUS product, and then that's what led me into small and medium-sized unit development. So that was the history pre-Mosaic, and that, along with all of the other lessons from being in a whole multitude of businesses across different disciplines and different industries, served me well in terms of the skill set that I, later learned was really important for where Mosaic is today. And, in hindsight, it makes sense that probably, there was no strategic plan, to be frank with you, at the time, but in hindsight, it's definitely served me well for running Mosaic now.
Some common threads there from, you talk to anyone who's successful, and it's always that, the reading, the mentors, that, failure, all that sort of stuff. And it's amazing to hear some of that journey that you've been through. And I think now, I'd love to understand, I'm sure so many people, they would look at Mosaic and have this look at where you are now and think, wow, look at this huge, amazing organisation, development, construction company. You guys are doing some beautiful, beautiful projects. But where did it start? What was the initial vision for Mosaic?
Yeah, so after that period of time, mate, there was a fair bit of clarity, and clarity comes from, having a crack, being focused, being resilient, learning from your mistakes, understanding what works, what doesn't, responding and listening to the market. So when I rebranded my construction development business to Mosaic Property Group, so somewhere around 2011, I think we officially transferred that over on the 1st of January 2012. So, I was on the field for probably 10 years prior to that, but in terms of Mosaic really taking shape, it was the beginning of 2012. And at that point in time, the only vision I had was that we saw an opportunity to be a really good quality builder developer in that sort of urban city fringe, so 3 to 8 Ks from the Brisbane CBD, develop sort of low to medium density products. So, units from 4 to 5 story walk-ups, maybe with a lift up to 8 stories, 15 to 60 apartments, or it might be 30 to 50 townhouses. So in and around really good quality suburbs, near schools, near hospitals, shopping centres, transport links, etc. So infill development, if you like. And so, mate, we set out to do sort of 3 of those projects a year. That was the only vision we had, and to do it in a way where people could rely on us to deliver good quality products. So I understood at that point in time that managing design, functionality and form. So, they have to be houses built by someone who is passionate about building quality, understanding through the previous experience what works, what creates spaces that are good spaces to live in, and based off the knowledge we had at the time. That's obviously been refined a lot since then, mate. I look back at that time and we didn't actually know that much, but I knew more than I knew 10 years prior, if that makes sense. So that was the clarity we had, and we just wanted to be really reliable. The person that, if they say they're going to do something, they do it. We stand behind our product. It was built for 20 years' time, not built for once we complete the project. And that we'd be proud to stand behind whatever it is that we delivered, and that we'd become known as a really good, high-quality builder-developer that you could trust.
Wow.
And from there, hopefully, people would want to buy off us again and tell their family and friends about it. So that was really the only vision I had at the beginning.
Wow. And then once you got that model right and you were delivering the quality and following through on that vision, it started to expand and grow from there, I'm assuming. So at what point, what were some of those key milestones to get from that starting point to where we see Mosaic today?
Well, I think it was about building capability. We didn't have any. The vision was only ever on a year-to-year basis is continue to get better. So to take the learnings that we had, and that was to listen to the market, was certainly to engage and listen with the people that trusted us to buy into our products, and how did they like living in our buildings, what worked for them, and where were the areas for improvement. And so we evolved our business pretty intensely and pretty quickly by being focused on what we can improve on, by engaging with those people that had bought off us previously, and then that just accelerated up from there. So, in the space of 7 or 8 years, we went from looking to do 3 projects a year to doing sort of 12 to 14. The average scale increased. was probably average size at that point of sort of 30 to 60 pieces of product, mostly apartments, some townhouse projects. And all of a sudden we've, delivered 35, 40 buildings and a little bit on the coast. We'd moved into the sunny coast at that point in time, early stage Gold Coast, but mainly Brisbane.
Wow.
And so we'd built some capability and along the way we'd invested in what has now become a fully vertically integrated design, development, construction, asset management business. But we built that capability slowly. So we didn't, I think that the really important point here for us, mate, is that we didn't go from doing 6 units or, a small townhouse project and then all of a sudden we're trying to build a 30-storey tower on the Gold Coast.
Yes, yeah.
And, and I'm not, knock anyone who's gone and done that. There's plenty of people who have and, plenty that won't be successful or haven't been successful and maybe a few will. But we've always been big on building capability and you've got to do that gradually. You can't jump steps, in my view, if you want to be in this industry for the long term and you want to create sustainability around culture, people, process and also commercial viability. So I think building capability over a period of time by doing a lot of it and learning quickly. So we're pretty intense, mate, around the expectations we have around where we need to get better. And it's never better about one or two or three things. It's those small incremental gains across every single part of the business.
Yep.
Like you pick up 1% improvements across 50, 60, 70 different parts of your business and then you compound that across multiple projects quickly, then all of a sudden you start to get some fairly exponential growth in your capability as a group. And that is what Mosaic is and that's what we build our business from.
Wow. And you can definitely see that from the outside. And I think I love hearing how you got there. And it's just such an important piece for people to grab onto is that I think some people love to try and jump from that 0 to 100. And like you said, some people do and good luck to them. But I think when you've got such a strong vision around quality and what sets Mosaic apart and makes you guys unique, that does need to be done gradually. And you can just see that you've executed that so well. And I guess you probably looked at it as being very gradual, but I think as well, if you're saying 2011 was when it really was Mosaic, to now we're 2015 and you look at the kind of work and scale that you guys are doing, like that is pretty exponential growth, but it compounds, right? Like you were saying.
It's funny. It's a really good point you make, mate. Like I think 2025. I think, for us people have often raised with us our exponential growth and all the rest of it. When you're in the trenches, working as intensely as we have been, and Usher is no different, mate, from my understanding of your business and your growth story and your founding principles and how you approach culture and people and relationships. And like we've been so intense for so long that it seems like a really, really long journey, right? But, and I say this to young people all the time, we make decisions by looking forward to decades, not years. When you take a long-term view and you do it for the right reasons, it is amazing what you can achieve in a 10 or 12, 15-year period. I think people get really focused on what they can achieve in 12 months or maybe 2 to 3 years and then either get disheartened or they get impatient or they jump steps or they rush or they take shortcuts or they're in a hurry or they're driven by the wrong motivations. And so compounding intense learning and commitment and discipline, being patient, taking a long-term view around every aspect of what it is that you do, and that is patience around balance sheet, it's patience around building capability, and so not trying to arrive somewhere too quickly, I think is at the heart of then waking up one day and you go, well, geez, we've done okay, I guess, and it feels like a really, really long journey because of how hard we've been running, but in reality, it's only been, 13, 14 years since we rebranded.
Wow. What a story, hey? And so what do you feel is like the Mosaic, if you were going to capsule it and say what sets Mosaic apart as their sort of signature brand, like if you were going to say what separates it, I mean, the market now, it is, yes, there was a bit of stalling for a while, but there's a lot of activity again now in that luxury residential market, and there is a lot of competition out there. What do you think sets Mosaic apart?
Mate, we don't worry too much about the competition. I'd agree with that too. Look, I think there's, like we spoke briefly outside before we came in, mate, there's been a bit of uncertainty from so many different levels at a local, state, federal, obviously from a global perspective, whether that's from the economy point of view or politically or all of those things combined, direction of interest rates, all of that stuff, obviously. Lots of challenges around inflation and in our particular industry, which has made it really problematic, and a lot of businesses come under a lot of pressure, and, we might talk about that later. But when we look at our business, all we focus on is what we can control, and we can control how we continue to apply effort at getting better across every single part of our business and delivering on the commitments and promises that we make to stakeholders. And that stakeholder group for us is quite large now, right? So it's not just the people who buy off us. They're clearly a very, very important part of our business. there's a lot of either trust or mistrust in our industry, mate. And if I look at even the last 4 years or so, there's a lot of projects that either were muted, that got pushed out, that got delayed, got changed, or there were shortcuts because the projects came under financial pressure, or the builder went broke, or the builder developer ended up in some form of conflict, which ultimately flowed through and impacted the buyers in that project, or the amount of developers that had to go back to buyers and ask for more money because, they haven't understood market influences and impacts around inflation and what happened during that period. So, mate, we look at it and go that the market has sort of certainly sorted itself out. It's creating opportunity for new people to come back into it. But in terms of our business through that period, I think the most consistent thing about our business, which has served us well, but it's not easy, is that we are very reliable in terms of how the market perceives us. So we've never not delivered a project in 20 years. These are some of the things, right? We've never not paid a bill to anyone or to any of our subcontractors, and we always pay on time. We have high expectations of those people who work for or inside or externally to our business, but we also treat their business with respect because we understand that ultimately sustainable relationships, sustainable industry, sustainable business only works if there's mutual alignments of interest for everybody, and that is our clients, that is our stakeholders. That could be banks, mate, could be community, could be government, could be consultants, could be some contractors. It's obviously our staff. And so, mate, for us, what sets us apart is that people know that if we say we're going to do something, we do it because we never have not. We're not perfect. We don't claim to be. Like, at the end of the day...
Yeah, and you don't need to be as long as you can really own it at every stage, right?
Mate, 100%. And we're upfront about that at the beginning, right? Like, we aim for the highest levels of perfection that we can possibly get inside our buildings around quality and delivery. But... mate, we say this to our clients all the time. The reality is buildings are designed and built by humans and by human hands and human minds, and they're flawed and they're not perfect. But what you can get from us is that we will follow through on the promises that we make, and that includes staying on the journey long after we complete. So we don't abdicate responsibility. That everyone who deals with us, that we control every part of the process, which means there is no third party that we'll ever blame or abdicate responsibility to. It is only us. And we've got a commitment to, once that building's complete, to stay involved in looking after that building for another 25 years. So you go to any Mosaic building, mate, stuff that I delivered even before we branded it Mosaic. We've got Mosaic staff, mate, that are proudly wearing our uniform with their names on it. They'll be the caretakers or the gardeners or the concierge staff that are passionate about looking after our buildings, because a home's just not something that gets created from an off-the-plan brochure through to 2 years later you hand over the keys. That's a home for somebody for the next 20, 25, 30 years. And if it's not for them, it's a home for somebody else that they sell to. And we don't think about just the buyer that we sell to now. We want to think about who are the people that are going to live in this building over the next 2 to 3 decades, because they will ultimately be the advocates or not for our brand, which creates our next crop of buyers that come through.
Love that.
So, mate, that's at the end of the day, that is what's defined, I think, who we are over this period of time.
Yeah, wow. And something we've observed too, like we've been so fortunate to work on a number of Mosaic developments, and just incredible quality, something that we're proud of as well, because we look at it and go, if we were a part of that, look at the amazing finish and so many awards that have come through from the industry. But there was a period of time where we were working on Mosaic developments, but through the likes of, established builders that you guys were engaging, Hutchinson Builders being one of them. We did quite a few through them. But obviously you guys have gone through a bit of an evolution yourself too, where you started to bring more of that construction back in-house. So I thought I'd love to hear you touch on, maybe reasons behind that or what that's looked like. Obviously you've had to scale more people and attract and acquire people to fill that space, but what's that move look like for you?
Mate, another good question, and it feeds back into some of the comments I made earlier. It's about building capability the right way, and that takes time to build capability. So we'd always started out with the vision of being a design-led builder-developer, but we didn't, as we grew our development business, and it grew quite quickly, we didn't want to try and pretend to build every type of built form that we had, right? So you're moving from townhouses to low density into smaller, medium density apartments to mid to high rise apartments, then into 30 plus story apartments. That's different construction methodology, different markets, different labour force. So we wanted to make sure that we built that capability gradually, because we just made decisions around what was in the best interest of delivering on our commitments to stakeholders and clients. And if at the time we thought that was to use someone who was an external builder, like a Hutchison's, for a couple of 30-storey buildings we delivered on the coast, then we made that decision because that was in the best interest of our brand. But over time, and external parties that worked with us during that period, including Hutchies, they did a really good job, and we've still got a good relationship with them. But we're pretty unique, mate, in that we have. I say that we're not everyone's cup of tea to work with because of the expectations that we create. I think we've got a saying internally, mate, that Mosaic is a joyfully intense place to work.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I like that. We might have to use that here. We get a similar vibe here within Usher, but we haven't coined it that way. But yeah.
And I think the joyfully might have been added by me at some point,
Yeah.
mate, just because I had to take the edge off the intense bit. But in all seriousness,
Yep.
mate, we are really big on treating relationships with respect. But we realise that it's easier for us to manage outcomes when we can control every part of the process. So while it served us really well at the time, and we're really grateful for those people that have contributed to our growth and story, and some of those people that you refer to have, mate, and we will always acknowledge that. But we understood that we get the best outcome when we're responsible for every single part of the process, including construction. So, we don't have any external builders involved in that. We don't have any external anyone involved in our business these days, mate.
Yep.
But it's taken us, like we said, mate, it's taken us 15 years to get to that point, right? So
building capability in every aspect, because there are so many aspects from design to, first you've got to acquire it, design it, construct it, and then you're going to maintain it the whole way through. So there's, what area do you find was the most challenging to build capability in?
Mate, I think all of them, and I pause for that decision-making process because even outside of that, right, like just take our marketing and sales capability. We do all of our sales in-house, and I will come back to that because it refers to the construction question. But look at our marketing and sales team, and they're just such an amazing group of people. They've been with Mosaic since the beginning. The work that they do in communicating the consistent messaging of our brand in the marketplace to how we deal with the market community, how we respect relationships, including agents, referrers, and otherwise. Like we don't, even though we've built the capability internally, we're a very open marketplace. So we are wanting to engage in relationships with anyone who's genuine about wanting to be involved in our business or have access to our projects or want to do work with us, right? So the capability is internal, but we spend a lot of time engaging with the market. And so they've all become really important to us. I think our sales and marketing team are the best at what they do, if not in the private development space in Queensland, possibly Australia. Like they're very, very good at what they do.
Wow.
And that's taken a long time to build that capability. But then I can say that about every part of our business. Like I look at our design and development team now. We've got amazing architects and interior designers that collaborate with best of practice architects to get the best outcomes. We've got an amazing group of people in our development team. And then, construction is the more obvious one. Like I think to build the level of capability that we have to deliver the type of buildings we build now. Like I walk onto a Mosaic construction site now, and it wasn't always this way. We've had to evolve, but I think we run those sites as well as any tier one builder, but we're not a tier one builder. But that's how we approach construction. But mate, same thing. Process, people, systems have been developed and refined and continue to be on a daily basis, and that's been done over a long period of time. And I can say that honestly about every aspect of the business, even the way we approach caretaking and the management of assets now. It's improved substantially over the last 10 years. So, mate, I think they all count just as much as each other because they're all reliant on each other for us to be able to deliver on the promises that then keep reinforcing the brand story, which enable us to keep turning up. I say keep turning up every January to go through the turnstiles and have the right to do business again. And you only can do that is if for the previous 12 months you've delivered on your promises and you've managed and looked after and cared for key stakeholders that you deal with. And if you do that, when you turn up next January after a break, you get the opportunity to go again. But that's probably about it. And we don't look too much further than that. We don't say, well, we've been in business for 15 years and we've got the right to, make mistakes or drop our standard. We know that we've only got the right to keep turning up based on how we behave today, next week, next month.
It's current credibility, hey?
100%, mate.
Yeah, love that. Really good.
This is like being in the Joe Rogan podcast.
It's exactly what's that. Yeah, love the setup. Pretty fortunate here. Something that we invested in, and it's been
mate, it's an awesome, great space and a great idea.
Yeah. So, Brook, something that I've actually been quite surprised with just of recent in dealing with your team, going project to project now, and obviously we're fortunate we've been doing a couple of big projects on the coast with you, one in Brisbane, and then we're working closely with that team down at Burleigh for Isabel. But in dealing with them and actually trying to get the right, through the tendering process and knowing what we're allowing for, very particular about the finishes and the quality and what we're trying to achieve. But I was surprised to hear from the project manager and the team how involved you are actually in that selection process and how often you go to site and you look at those things. And I just had this perception of such a big organisation and yourself and seeing that you're quite a lot in the public face now as well. I sort of had this image of you being quite removed from the business, but I was surprised to hear that you're actually very, very hands-on. But I thought I'd love to hear from your perspective, like what does, a day in the life, or what sort of engagement do you have with the business day to day?
Mate, another really good question. We talk about, FOP, finger on pulse, hands on wheel. We are very much a families, values-based business. And at the end of the day, it's a really difficult business to maintain relevance and to maintain solvency and to be successful over a long period of time through multiple cycles. You don't see many multi-generational developers and builders because it is a really difficult business to sustain itself over a long period of time. And there is a level, and I use that word again, but not lightly, intensity that is required. And so when you come from nothing and you've also had to deal with some hardship, and everyone's got their story, right, and everyone's been through something, but when you've travelled a journey to get somewhere, then you understand how important it is to continue to fight for maintaining your ability to keep doing what you're doing. Like, I genuinely love what I do. I love the people I get to work with. Like, we've got an amazing group of people at Mosaic, and most of them have been with us for a long time. We're over 300 staff now, and there's probably another couple of thousand people in terms of consultants, contractors, subcontractors, trades that work with us on a regular basis. And so feel really fortunate, but we also feel a sense of responsibility, mate, to those people, to not let them down. And ultimately that rests on my shoulders. So I take the responsibility of running this business really seriously, and I've never looked to want to free up more time or to, run the business more remotely. One is, it's not how I'm wired, mate, and I also don't believe that's what the business demands. So I'm as involved as I ever have been, if not even more. It's across every single part of the business, and not, I've got people within our business that are better than me in a lot of the different parts of our business, but I'm still very, very much involved in that business. So yes, mate, I still have the discipline of, we run our development and design meeting every Wednesday afternoon in the office. It can go for 2 hours, it can go for 4.5, 5 hours, but there is not one decision across any project, no matter how small, no matter how big, not one material, not one to finish, not one design decision across any Mosaic project that I don't sign off on. And the guys still use a sticker process with a red pen. And if it's not right, we challenge, we give feedback, we contemplate whether that is the best outcome. And if it's not, they go away, and then next week we have another crack. And that's still the discipline we run across every single part of our business. And then obviously we then need to have strong accountability around how does that play out in terms of executing on site. So yes, mate, very, very involved in the business, very, very involved still in design, delivery, construction, as well as obviously other parts of the business. But I love the fact, at the end of the day, mate, we're a construction development business, and it's really important for me that I'm continuing to get my hands dirty in that regard.
Wow, that's amazing.
Although the guys will tell you that I don't do much sweeping up. So
enough of that in my youth, draw a line
mate.
Somewhere, right?
Enough of that in my youth, mate.
Yeah. I wasn't actually going to go personal with today's chat, but just hearing that, how do you then balance personal? Like, do you have a family and kids or anything? I don't know if you want to touch on any of that, but just getting that balance between work, that intensity, and then having the right, looking after your own health, your family, your relationships, that sort of thing.
Yeah, mate, look, I'm fine with that. I'm very fortunate to have an amazing wife, and we've got 4 beautiful kids, mate. They're sort of in that age group of 18 down to 11 now, so it's a really special time for us as a family. I lived away during the middle of the week for all of the years. We raised our kids on a farm up outside Maloney in the Sunshine Coast inland. And, then before they went on to boarding school and all the rest of it, we've all sort of just got back together under one roof as we've moved to Brisbane in the last couple of years. But I've got a very supportive wife and family. I'm very lucky, mate. We're pretty private, mate. Like, outside of work and close family, we cherish every moment that we can get together as a family, and we're a very outdoors family. But we're pretty simple, to be frank, mate, in terms of wanting to spend time together doing the same thing. I see you walking around your offices. You've got the shrine of surfboards and snowboards, 2 of my passions, and and a strong focus on health, well-being, both mental and physical here, and that's a big part of our family life, mate. So, we do have to balance that, being physically and mentally fit. But, mate, I aspire for not much more than spending time with close family and mostly my immediate family as often as I can, every spare minute that I'm not working. We do a fair bit in the community, mate, so that also is an inspiration for me. So I've got to balance that, work, and then time with family, and it's never perfect. You go through stages in your life where you get out of balance. I think as long as by the end of the journey, whenever that is, mate, that you've had a reasonable level of balance. But that's us, mate. And we don't wish for much more than that, mate, because we're really fortunate.
Wow, that's amazing. I just try and imagine juggling all that, but it's something actually I read a long time ago that talked about balance, and it was balance is not anything being even, because that's impossible. You're never going to spend the exact same amount of time with your family or your health or whatever, but it's doing the right thing for the right amount of time for the right reasons. And it's sort of, that might be, it's more about the quality. So you may only get a small portion of time for your community stuff or your family stuff, but like you said, if you're doing really quality, you're getting out in nature, you're doing the things you love, even though it might feel as though so much of your life is going towards one other thing, you can still feel like you're in balance, or that you're feeling fulfilled in those areas, or you're maintaining those relationships because of the quality of the way that you're doing it. And I think there's so many people that miss those opportunities because, yes, they work hard, but instead of going back to their family renewed about what they wanted to do, even if they've only got an hour to spend with them, they'll waste that hour being frustrated about that they only had an hour rather than actually using it and making the most of it. And I just love hearing that, imagining how much you've got on your plate that you still have that time for your family. It's really, it's cool, inspirational.
Yeah, it's a good point, mate. And I'd agree with all of that. And I think, and there's no perfect science around it. There's no perfect response to it, mate. There's no perfect way to live your life, obviously. So I think as long as you do your best and you do it with the right intention, and, there's times, mate, where I know that I wish I was more present, when I was with my kids, because I've got a lot of stuff going on, and you'll deal with different seasons in your life that can be really stressful, and you've got to be able to find a way to survive those and be resilient and come out the other side. And then you've got other seasons in life where you get time for a little bit more recovery, restoration, time with family, time for yourself, time for health, time in nature.
Yep.
And I've been lucky enough, mate, through all of it that I get a reasonable level of balance, mate. And we live a life that we feel very fortunate to live. We spend a lot of time have in the mountains close to the ocean, and that, for us has been a big part of our life.
Really cool. That's awesome. One thing I wanted to transition into as well is talking about partnerships in the industry. Obviously, we feel fortunate to be one of those partners in different phases of working with you, but how important are partners and suitable subcontractors, in a busy market? So, I know you already went into it a bit earlier, but what does it actually really mean to identify and select the right kind of partners to work with for Mosaic?
Yeah, it's really important, mate. Look, you can set various standards inside your organisation, and it can start from the top all the way through, and we've got requirements for your staff to operate in a certain way. And even for us, when we put our site teams together, do we have the right construction strategy and methodology? Do we set our sites up well? Have we designed our buildings well? Have we thought of everything? Are they efficient? And then do we engage with the right partners and contractors? And all of those things combine to create outcomes, and they're either positive or negative outcomes depending on how that cake is baked, so to speak.
Yes, yeah.
And so for us, we've learned, for all of us, the business has come under a lot of, or the industry, I should say, has come under a lot of commercial pressure in the last sort of 5 years. It has always been a tough industry.
Yes,
so commercial outcomes will always drive part of the decision making, but for us, it can't just be about that. We need to know that we've got the right trades that can work together in partnership sequentially, and deliver on outcomes that ensure that they meet the standards that we require of our subcontractors. So do those contractors turn up? Do they say they're going to turn up? Do they do so with enthusiasm? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Will they engage in meaningful conversation when they don't agree with something? Can we have robust conversations that ensure we get the best outcome? Can't compromise safety. We've got to look after our workers, and we've got to deliver quality. And if we've got partners that are aligned with that and understand that by our contractors being able to deliver a really critical part of the commitments that we make to the overall promise that we've made to our clients, that really helps our business. And when contractors can do that, they're extremely important to us, mate, because at the end of the day, we can do all of the work that we want to do in finding, designing and creating these great opportunities, but the contractors are the ones 5-6 days a week and often in tough conditions has to physically go and deliver on that promise. So having the right partners that are committed to quality and understand that impact on our brand, and then the ability then to build relationships with those guys, so that when you have tough times or you have challenging conversations, that you get through that on the basis that it's a sustainable, mutually beneficial relationship means that we want to go and work together again. And that's the ultimate test. When we finish the project, did we deliver the outcomes that we both committed to? And that's two-way. Did we deliver on our promises to you as a subcontractor? Have you delivered on your promises to us? Did that create a great outcome for our brand? And if it did, and if it was financially viable for both parties, then that is the commitment then to go, okay, let's go and do this again, because that was a really good experience. And so that is what we're looking for, mate.
Yeah, well.
In a subcontract ultimately, and we've most certainly had that experience with Usher Group today, and it's why we love working with you guys.
No, it's awesome. Thanks for sharing. It's a simplified process when you come back to your values and the outcomes and that long-term vision of what you want for Mosaic, but it's not always easy to get there. You've got to go through some refinement and maybe putting some people to the test and seeing if they actually show up the way they say they're going to. So, we've had similar experiences with suppliers for ourselves. Sometimes we have to engage specialised contractors too for some of the niche work we do. And we take on a similar sort of process of going like, do they actually really align with our values, and are they going to uphold the Usher brand? Because ultimately that's what it is at the end of the day. We can't sit there and blame and finger point at someone else. It's all, we've got to take ownership for every part of what we do as well. And I just love seeing that you take that full circle look at, every part that comes in. It's just complete ownership of what makes a Mosaic development. Really cool, Brook. So, all good, mate. One thing I did want to ask, it might be a rumour, but whether it's true or not, is that I've heard that there's sometimes a bit of a lineup outside of the Mosaic head office with samples and suppliers. There's people waiting at the door for you to have a look at their product. And obviously, being that you guys are very prestigious, and you honestly, like from a perception point of view, you guys sit right at the top of the market in terms of quality, finish, all that sort of stuff. You really set yourselves apart when it comes to quality. So then you need to really seek out those materials and the products and things that go into the Mosaic developments. Yeah. Is that rumour true? And then how do you go about finding the right materials?
Yeah, well, you've always got to be careful with rumours, mate. But often there's some truth at the heart of a rumour, mate. And there is. Look, it's great that people want to come and work with us, mate.
Yeah.
They want to introduce new products and they want a chance to pitch, and we love that, mate. We're generally passionate. We spoke about this before we turned the mics on earlier, mate. Like, I just really passionate about this industry, mate. And when there's other people that are passionate about what they do, like when I turn up here today at Usher's, and I said, mate, this could have been an industrial shed out in the middle of nowhere where you got some account staff processing some invoices and some dispatch for your painters and renderers and sign writers to come and grab stuff and then go to work. And it's not. This is a family of Usher people. Then you get that sense when you go around, mate. That's driven by values, behaviours, principles, expectations. And so, mate, we love that, and we love other people that are passionate about it. So whether you're a supplier wanting to pitch a new product, and we'll always be open to that. Whether it's young people that want advice on the direction they want the industry, it's hard because time is poor, but we'll always try and make time. That doesn't mean we don't make promises to people we can't deliver on. So we don't promise anything other than we'll give you an opportunity to come and present what you've got to offer, to pitch your services, and if you need assistance or help, to ask for it. And then from there, like always, mate, if it is the right product, if it is the right contract, if it is the right relationship, then hopefully we get the chance to do business together.
No, that's great. Really good to hear. And from an outlook perspective in the industry, obviously there's a lot happening in Southeast Queensland. We've got the Olympic Games coming up. There's a bit happening here, and there's a lot of migration happening in here as well. Do you have a particular viewpoint or outlook on the industry, Southeast Queensland, where it's going, what part Mosaic wants to play in that?
What I do, we probably need another hour just to talk about this one point. Super passionate about industry, but I'm also super passionate about Southeast Queensland. We've done work outside of this region back in the earlier days, but we are very much a purely focused these days. Southeast Queensland builder developer, and so really passionate about the region. I think if you look at this next 6 to 7 years and the 5 to 6 years that have come before us, it's the most exciting time in Southeast Queensland's history, and you can see that people want to live here, mate, and why wouldn't they? Like, from a global perspective, tell me whether there's many other places on planet Earth that you'd want to move to, you want to invest capital, you want to raise your kids, you want to get educated. And then even within the context of Australia, is there anyone that's more desirable in Australia than Southeast Queensland? I don't think so, and the migration numbers suggest that, not just in terms of people coming in from overseas, but in internal interstate migration. We're really fortunate. We've got this amazing infrastructure pipeline that will benefit all Queenslanders ultimately, so whether that's upgraded rail, road networks, whether it's new runways at airports or cruise ship terminals, and obviously the Olympic infrastructure around stadiums and hospitals and schools, and it goes on and on and on. With that creates disruption in the short term. It does create some pressure and some further pressure in the industry, and because we're ultimately competing for the same resources, and that's materials and people. It's a concern of mine. It's been a concern for a while. So I don't want to get too bearish on that stuff, mate, because I'm genuinely excited about the future.
There's definitely a bit of a buzz in the air. It's just, it's going to come
just navigating our way through, mate. And there's a whole conversation separate to this around the role that federal, state and local government, along with industry, unions, everybody has to play in being able to work together in a collaborative and responsible way to make sure that we can do this and do it responsibly and sustainably. We've got massive productivity issues in this state, just about more so than ever else. We've got labour shortages in our construction industry. We need to attract more people that see the construction industry as a viable career choice and are actually passionate about wanting to come into the industry. So I think we have a bigger role to play there. We've probably got some short-term skill gaps to fill. I think we're probably 30,000 people short in the construction industry in Queensland just to deliver what's coming up in the next 6 to 7 years.
Yes,
and so given, like, mate, last year, just take my space, like built form apartments, we had 510 apartments, I think, sold off the plan and 1,100 apartments delivered in 2024. So that's,
Wow.
the peak of the last apartment boom, 2016, it was about 13,500. So, you're off about 92%. And I think it's the lowest number of off-the-plan sales in a calendar year since pre-GFC or around the GFC time. So it's a problem, mate. Supply is not coming on. It's not coming on because it's not commercially viable, and there's a whole heap of reasons for that. So we're pretty passionate. We're trying to do our bit that we can, and particularly as perceived industry leader in our conversations with different levels of government. But industry also needs to be responsible around the part that they need to play. And so as long as we all work together, and conversations like this are a part of that, right?
Yeah.
So drawing attention to the good things that are going on in our industry. Because we all have a really important part to play for Queenslanders, because it's not just the infrastructure development pipeline, it's the much needed housing.
Yes,
And that could be commercial office, industrial, retail, supermarkets, schools, hospitals, it's all of that. But I am concerned about the lack of diversity of housing supply. And every Queenslander, given it's the best place in the world, and we just had that chat, best place in the world to live and grow up, be educated, raise a family. Everyone should have a right to be able to aspire to own a home, or certainly to have security of tenure and be able to live in a home as a tenant. And for those in our community that, for whatever reason, and sometimes through no fault of their own, find themselves at a significant disadvantage, we need to look after those people, mate. And so we're really passionate. We do a lot in the homelessness space, and we're trying to do more in the social and affordable space. It's sort of more aligned to our foundation than it is our business. But really, really exciting opportunity. I know it's a question that gets asked and people want to talk about all the stuff that's positive, and it is super positive. I can't emphasise that enough, but we've also got to make sure that we are all trying to do our bit to tackle the problems that are preventing maximising the extent of that opportunity over the next 8 years. So massive opportunity, plenty of challenges, but also that's an exciting time because it creates opportunity for those that are generally committed to wanting to operate in South East Queensland and in our industry.
Yeah, and if you've established those core partnerships, then, even if the industry is going mad, you'd hope that there's that synergy between the right partnerships, that they're going to stay with you on that journey and that ride, even though there's so much else noise going on, or, flashy lights and attractive opportunities. I think we're trying to look at that as a business too, as going, there's so much out there, we're getting inundated with opportunities, which is a great problem to have, but it's also risky. We've got to really filter through and go, where do we want to position ourselves? Where do we want to put our resources? Who do we want to work and partner with? Who's aligned in what sort of outcomes we want to reach? And I think when you have the opportunity to partner with an organisation like Mosaic that really values that synergy and that same sort of outcomes, then that becomes a priority for us, to sort of going, let's filter out these ones that, yes, they're opportunities and they might be exciting, but if you're going to have to pick and choose, you try and stick with the ones where there's already that confidence and credibility and delivery, and you talk about, being paid on time, all the things that matter. There are so many sexy opportunities that are out there with what's going on, but they also come with a lot of, risk and challenges too. So I think we've been really mindful about who we work and partner with. So it's just so cool to hear from your perspective, the role you guys are trying to play, identifying the problems that are out there, but still maintaining how you go about business so that you can look after the people that come on that journey with you. So
we just spoke about the fact, mate, that we've got a massive underinvestment in young people choosing trade-based skill as a long-term career opportunity rather than a fallback, which that frustrates me, and I've been pretty vocal about that in the past. Like, it should be a primary career choice because it's an amazing career choice. You've got flexibility of work. You'll always have work. You can work for yourself. You can work for others. So there's a lot more work to do in that space. And so because of that and the pressure commercially that's been on our industry, and also some of the toxic nature of how relationships have been managed between head contractors, subcontractors, head contractors and developers, and we've seen that play out. Like, you've had close to 8,000 insolvencies in our industry in the last 4.5 years, and that's about 27% of total insolvencies across the country, which is massively disproportionate to the place that construction plays relative to GDP. So there's some issues, and there's some massive issues, and so we need to be alive to that. And those issues are there because we don't have sustainability in those relationships. So I'm the biggest advocate you'll get for people, for workers' rights. And, like, people have come to me and said, what do you think about the fact that we've got massive productivity issues? And I said, well, we do. But we're not going to compromise workers' rights, safety, quality of how we look after and run our construction sites to compromise that. That's not the answer. The answer is better collaboration between good quality trades, contractors, consultants, developers to make sure that we are maximising our productivity but looking after the people and attracting more people that want to work in the industry. And so selection of partners is really important, mate, because there's work to be had, but there's plenty of work that's been unprofitable for a lot of people, which is why there's been so many insolvencies. So it's just as important for us to select the right subcontractor as it is for the subcontractor to select the right head contractor and developer to actually work for. And when you find mutual alignment and it's for mutual benefit and everyone wins from it, and the people working for that contractor love being on those sites, the contractor loves it, we love it as the developer builder, then we go, well, of course we want to do more with that particular contractor because it's been good for all of us, there's mutual alignment of values, and the outcomes we're creating benefit everybody. That's what's sustainable, mate. So couldn't agree more with the approach you guys are taking.
Love it, mate. Well, we probably need to bring this into land soon, but I thought to close out, I'd love to hear if you've got, I guess, a legacy or a mindset behind what you would, if you were going to leave a legacy behind for Mosaic or yourself, Brook Monahan, like what would you want that legacy to be? I know you talked about doing everything very incremental. You don't look too far ahead. Everything's, just getting that credibility now, today, tomorrow. But if you really had to sort of pause and go, what would I like Mosaic to be known for as that legacy? Have you got anything there?
Mate, yeah, and I don't want to give you a boring answer, but I can only speak from my truth in the heart. I don't typically love the word legacy because it can be, not always, can be driven from a response to ego, right? And and so that's certainly not who we're about. I don't have any view around how Mosaic or I'll be remembered. I don't think high enough of myself for that to ever take place in the thought process, mate, if I'm really frank with you. But it is like, we play a big part in place making. So, do we uplift communities with the buildings that we build? And not just now, but in 15, 20, 30 years' time, are we still proud of that building and the attention that we took to maintaining an approach to design, form, functionality, sustainability, materiality that suits that community and uplifts that community? Does it uplift those people that choose to live, not just your first primary buyer, but your second and tertiary buyers, or your, primary, secondary, tertiary renters if they, if one of our owners happens to rent their property out. So they're the things that are important to us. So if we know that over time we've contributed to a significant diversity of housing supply, if we uplift communities, if we uplift our buyers, if we stay engaged in those commitments and promises that we've made, like we have long after we've delivered those buildings, and if we contribute back to the communities who ultimately give us the social licence to do the business that we do in the first place, right? So have we made a meaningful enough contribution with the skill set that we've got for those people in other forms of housing, which is a big passion of ours? I think if I look back 20 to 30 years from now, and hopefully I'm still doing this, mate, in 20 to 30 years, we can say that we did our part to help the housing situation in this state and to provide housing choice for others that find it more challenging to be able to get into housing, and to make sure that we uplift those people and those communities that have given us the right to develop in the first place.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love that you put the ego aside just to focus on keeping that current credibility the whole way through. So, something to be proud and look back on. Brook,
cheers, mate.
Mate, absolute pleasure having you come out today. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man, but really got a lot out of today, so thanks for coming to join us.
No, it's my pleasure, mate. Appreciate the invite. Love what you're about, Michael and Usher. So well done. You guys keep up the great work. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.